As I was folding a kitchen towel, the doorbell rang for the second time. Ethan had just placed 2 steaming cups of coffee on the table when I went to answer it. The door wasn't even open a hand's width before I saw Jessica standing there. Her eyes sparkled like someone who'd just won a game their opponent didn't even know they were playing. "Dad and I are just stopping by for a bit," Jessica said, her smile slightly forced but her gaze unwavering. Beside her stood my father, Henry, silent hands in his pockets, his face pretending he had no part in what was about to unfold. "I brought the papers," Jessica continued, holding up a stack of documents. "Mom said you'd agree, so we've already signed. The house is being transferred to my name." I don't remember how I breathed in that moment. All I recall is the sound of a coffee cup crashing to the floor in the kitchen, shattering, as if answering for me. I took the papers. Not to read them closely, but to confirm what I'd already sensed: my name wasn't there. Not once. I never agreed, I said, my voice low but clear. Then I closed the door, slowly, no slam, but enough to end the play they'd scripted without consulting me. "My name is Sarah Walker. I'm 32 years old. 2 days ago I married the man I love, Ethan. We didn't have a grand wedding, just a small ceremony by the Columbia River with close friends, a few colleagues, and an atmosphere as light as the white lace shawl I draped over my shoulders as I walked down the aisle. Ethan is quiet, a bit rigid, but always keeps his word. He knows I don't trust easily. I grew up in a family where kindness came with conditions and affection often carried a bargain. Maybe that's why I never told anyone, not even Ethan, that I'm the sole heir to a $1.2 million estate, a 3-story mahogany house in West Portland, where I've lived since moving out of my college dorm. I didn't flaunt it, post pictures, or mention it at family dinners. I kept it as the last private piece of myself I could control, and I always had a vague feeling I'd need it someday, like a shield. I didn't expect someday to come so soon. 2 days after my wedding, right at my doorstep, in the hands of my sister. When I returned to the living room, Ethan was wiping up the spilled coffee with the kitchen towel. He looked at me, didn't ask, just waited. "The estate," I said softly. "They signed the house over to my sister. No discussion, no heads up, just Mom said you'd agree." Ethan didn't blink. He set the towel down and pulled out a chair. "Are you sure legal documents, no mention of my name." They acted like it was a given. I opened my laptop. My fingers didn't tremble, but my heart was off beat from the moment I held those papers. I logged into my personal financial account, where I stored every certificate deed and record of asset changes. Then I accessed Multnomah County's property ownership portal. My name was still there. Thank God. But I knew what they'd done was a legal impersonation, potentially fraud, if I didn't stop it in time. I leaned back in my chair, and for the first time since the wedding, I felt cold. Not the weather's chill, but the hollow coldness of realizing I was never family, just a convenient tool to exploit. They came thinking I'd nod, because I always nodded. I paid for Jessica's tuition when she dropped out mid-degree. I co-signed a loan for Dad when I'd just started working. I helped Mom with medical bills, only to later find out she funneled most of that money into a spa account. I always thought it was for family. That family was worth sacrificing for. But the moment Jessica stood there holding those papers like a birthday card, I knew they never waited for my yes. They only waited for me not to say no. Ethan returned after a call from the office. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "They'll come back," he said. "Of course," I replied. "They never think they're wrong." I opened the ownership documents and began drafting a legal confirmation letter. I didn't write out of anger. I wrote with clarity. I sent the first email to the lawyer I'd retained since buying the house. I attached a copy of the trust fund I'd set up before the marriage, because once Jessica had borrowed my laptop to look for freelance work, then sold access to my software to a stranger online. Everything I'd ever given I was taking back, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't let others keep writing my life story with their reckless ink. I looked at the clock. 10 p.m. Ethan was brewing tea. I heard him mutter something like, "You shouldn't have to do this during our honeymoon." I gave a faint smile. "I think this is the real honeymoon," I said. "It's when you see clearly who's truly standing with you." My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. No greeting, no check-in, just 2 lines. "Your sister says it's done. Don't make this hard. I know you understand." I turned off the screen. They didn't see they're wrong. They only saw me starting to change, and they were scared. I went to the bedroom, sat on the bed, and opened a file I'd never used before. Banknotes, asset maps, digital certifications, emails with the registry office. Everything was backed up, password protected, time-stamped. I'm not one for fights. I just don't like being erased from my own life. The bedroom window was open the night breeze light and carrying the scent of Portland's July rain. Ethan walked in with a cup of chamomile tea. He didn't ask more questions. We sat in silence. In that quiet, I felt for the first time that I was in a safe place, not because someone was protecting me, but because I was learning to protect myself. The next morning, I'd call the registry office. I'd confirm every ownership, right? I'd send a formal warning about the unauthorized transfer attempt. I'd lock every door they thought they could push open anytime. Because I'm no longer the 16-year-old writing essays for my sister hoping for a thank you. I'm Sarah Walker. I have a house. I have a good husband. And I have a clarity they never thought I'd find. I don't know if they'll come back soon. I don't know if they'll cry, apologize, or keep pretending they don't understand. I only know one thing. I've started redrawing the map of my life, and they no longer hold the keys. They acted like I owed them. Like my objection was the anomaly. Like signing the house over to my sister was a given just because Mom said I'd agree. And strangely, what kept me awake that night wasn't the forged papers, but their confidence. They came without fearing I'd refuse. They acted like I'd never dare say no. I lay in the dark, eyes wide, staring at the ceiling, as if answers hid in the dim shadows cast by streetlights. Ethan was asleep. His breathing was steady and light. In that moment, I envied his peace, something I'd lost long ago, maybe since I was 12. I clearly remember that afternoon. Dad took Jessica and me for pizza. She ordered freely. I picked a small portion. When the bill came, Dad patted his pockets and laughed. "Whoops, forgot my wallet today. Sarah, you got any cash?" I dug into my purple savings wallet, pulling out every coin. I counted exactly $18.50, saved over 3 weeks of chores. I didn't blame Dad. Not then. But he never paid me back, not even with a promise. I never asked. When I was 16, Jessica was failing literature at risk of not graduating. She promised if I wrote her final essay, she'd clean my room for a month. I stayed up 2 nights writing it. She submitted it, got an A. That night I came home to find her sprawled on the couch watching TV eating popcorn. No thank you. No cleaning. No guilt. I didn't bring it up. Because back then I thought she's probably busy or forgot. I'm the younger sister. Helping her is normal. At 25, Mom needed knee surgery. Insurance covered little. I was working 2 jobs, secretary by day, bookstore stalker by night. I sent her over $6,000 from my savings. 3 weeks later I visited. I saw a stack of bills from a luxury spa on Bainbridge Island. Full body treatments, hot springs therapy, imported Swiss essential oils. "Where'd you get the money for this?" I asked, keeping my tone even. Mom shrugged. "I used a bit of what you sent. I figured, it's okay. You need to recover mentally after surgery, too." I smiled, like I understood. But that night I wrote in my notebook, "There's no just a bit when they don't ask first." I never asked for anything back. They called it love. I called it default. I became the stand-in when someone broke a promise, the backup. When someone needed to offload debt, the nodder. When someone needed a reason. No one asked if I wanted to, and I foolishly never demanded they ask. I remember when I was about 23 managing projects for a small startup. Jessica came over saying she was freelancing and needed access to specialized software my company provided. "Just borrow your account for a few weeks to make a client demo," she said. I agreed. No contract, no conditions. I emailed her the details. 2 months later, my account was locked. After tracing it with IT, I found she'd sold the access to a stranger for $600, someone I'd never heard of. When I asked, she just shrugged, half laughing. "You weren't using it. I saw it sitting there, so I made use of it." "Did you know I could have lost my job?" I asked. "But you didn't." I didn't lose my job. But I lost trust. Lost the ability to tell what was careless and what was intentional. I looked at Ethan, sleeping. He lay on his side, his hand near mine. I didn't dare move, afraid to wake him. But in my head, a question I'd avoided for years echoed. If they never asked permission, never sought my opinion, did I ever truly agree? I was trained to see silence as duty, to believe that if I said nothing, I was responsible for the outcome. I don't blame them for living like that. I only blame myself for not stopping sooner. The next morning, when Ethan woke, he saw me still at the desk. "Didn't sleep?" he asked, his voice low and hoarse from waking. I shook my head. "I need more time to sort my thoughts." Ethan sat beside me. We looked at each other, not the look of newlyweds, but of people knowing something vital was about to change forever. He took my hand, didn't speak right away. Then he asked softly, "Do you really believe they never took advantage of you?" I wanted to answer, I truly did. But my lips wouldn't move. I'd spent too many years pretending I wasn't used. Pretending I helped them because I wanted to, not because I feared being ostracized. I'd made forgiveness a reflex without realizing sometimes forgiveness helps no one. It only makes others think they can do it again. I stood and walked to the window. Morning light was creeping in. The world outside was calm maples, shedding leaves, the freshly painted white picket fence, the quiet street without car horns. Everything looked unchanged, but I had changed. I was no longer the 12-year-old emptying her savings to pay a bill because Dad forgot his wallet. No longer the young woman hoping for a thank you from her sister for passing her finals. No longer the daughter writing checks for hospital bills and pretending not to see spa charges on receipts. I am Sarah Walker, and I'd started to see every price I paid no one demanded. But they always knew I'd pay. I returned to the desk, opened the lawyer's email. In his response, he wrote, "We've received the information and proof of ownership. I recommend proceeding with the next step, issuing a formal legal notice to block the unauthorized transfer and document the misconduct." I clicked compose new email. Ethan stood heading to the kitchen, but before leaving he turned and asked, "So, what's next?" I looked at the screen. I didn't need to think much anymore. I'm taking everything back, starting with my name. I woke at 5 a.m., not out of obsession or fear. I woke because I was ready. Not for revenge, but to do what I should have done long ago, protect my last boundaries. The house was quiet. The first light of day slipped through the kitchen curtains, casting faint streaks on the table. I brewed a black coffee, no sugar. Its bitterness woke me more than any comfort my family ever offered. Before me was a to-do list I'd written last night, after emailing the lawyer. First, the bank. I logged in with 2-factor authentication and accessed the admin settings. The joint account with Mom created during her medical issues for quick transfers seemed convenient then. Now I understood unchecked convenience invites abuse. I revoked her access, changed all security codes. Next was the secondary credit card used just for doctor appointments, but recently charged at a high-end furniture store in California. No more. Every access point, every invisible line I'd let them use as a shortcut, I erased them one by one. By 7:15 a.m., I called the vehicle registry. The Ford Dad was driving was still in my name. I'd bought it at my old job. He'd said, "Let me borrow it for a few months, I'll transfer it later." 4 years had passed. I didn't wait longer. I filled out Form 137 to reclaim ownership. The law allowed it since it was my name. I also requested license plate revocation if no response came within 30 days. Not because I needed the car. I needed the respect they'd erased from every detail of my life. I logged into the trust fund I'd set up before the engagement. I'd caught Jessica snooping through my personal files on the table once. I said nothing, but I quietly built protective walls. The trust was split 3 ways: property maintenance, emergency reserve, discretionary support. I selected the last. A prompt appeared, disable secondary access. I clicked yes. 20 minutes later, the lawyer replied, "We confirm receipt and updates. All secondary account access will be cut within 24 hours. I set the phone down. My breathing deepened. It was the feeling of reclaiming mental space. I accessed the smart home system. I'd given Mom remote door access for emergencies, she said. The last time she used it, she let Jessica in to grab forgotten documents. I was in Seattle then. When I returned, a file drawer was ransacked. I went to settings. Each device appeared: front yard camera, smart doorbell, digital lock, heating controls, each tied to an access list. I deleted them all. Only me and Ethan remained. The house wasn't just wood, glass, and concrete. It was the one place I could decide who entered. I wouldn't let them walk in without knocking anymore. I was about to take a break when my phone pinged with a new email from the lawyer. "Sarah, the steps are progressing smoothly. But I must warn you, they'll react. Not because they're right, but because they're losing control. Be prepared." I set the phone down, and as he predicted, less than 2 hours later, Jessica started a live stream. She sat in her car, face tear-streaked, speaking in a trembling, dramatic tone. "I never thought my sister would do this. Everything we did was to keep the assets in the family. Mom sacrificed her whole life for it. I just wanted fairness." Over 800 views in 10 minutes. She picked peak hours to go live. By noon, Mom sent a 3-paragraph email. First line, I didn't know things would go this far. Middle, I just wanted to keep things in the family. Avoid legal mess. You understand, right? Last line, what you're doing hurts your sister and breaks my heart. We're family. I read it 3 times. No, sorry. No, we were wrong. Just you're hurting. Then Dad Henry sent a single line text. Your sister's getting a lawyer. I suggest you stop. Don't take this too far. As expected, they weren't afraid of being wrong. They were afraid of being caught. That afternoon, Ethan came home early. He scrolled his phone, then set it down. They're talking a lot, he said, not looking at me. Lots of relatives are sharing Jessica's post. Should I say something I asked? He looked up. No. Keep doing what you're doing. But if you speak, let your lawyer do it. I smiled, and opened my email. I drafted a formal request to Multnomah County's property registry, confirming the fraudulent transfer attempt, and requesting a block on unverified transactions. I attached property record signatures, timestamps, and a note offering cooperation if fraud was investigated. I hit send. Just then a chat window popped up with a message from Jessica. You're cruel, Sarah. Mom's been crying all day. I've done so much for you over the years, and now you're tearing everything apart. I looked at the message, didn't reply, because I knew one word from me, and they'd think I had room to retreat. This time I wasn't retreating. That evening, Ethan and I ate in silence. The lasagna he made smelled rich with cheese and oregano, but I tasted nothing. Only when he added another slice to my plate did I notice him watching me, not asking, just present. They won't stop easily, I whispered. Ethan nodded. It's okay. You've come this far not to turn back. I raised my glass of water and said softly, and I'm not done. They think this is the end, but it's just the beginning. No one contacted me directly for 3 days. No texts, no calls, no apologies. Just a silence stretched taut like an overstrung guitar string ready to snap. I knew they were planning something. Silence from those who once shouted was always a sign. And as predicted when I opened social media on Tuesday morning, it had begun. Jessica posted an Instagram story, black background, white text in slanted font, like an obituary card. Not everyone with shared blood has a family heart. Below, a string of emojis, scissors, an exclamation mark, a pierced heart. No names, no specifics, but enough for people to guess. A friend from college, Amy, texted me. Saw Jess's story. What's going on? You okay? I didn't reply. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I'd decided not to play in their arena anymore. There, I couldn't win. There, the loudest voice always seemed right. That afternoon, Mom posted a photo on Facebook, 5 of us at Cannon Beach when I was in college. I wore a purple hoodie, my curly hair a mess in the wind. Jessica smiled brightly, and Dad had his arm around Mom. The caption read, Before money changed everything. When we were still a family. The photo got nearly 200 likes in an hour. Comments below. Those were the days. So sad to see families break over material things. Hope things get better. I read them all. Each word was a small, sharp, cold blade. No one asked me anything. No one knew anything. They only knew what my family chose to show. That night I got an email from Dad sent from his old work address he'd retired over 3 years ago. Sarah, I think you're taking this too far. Everyone's worried. Come to the house this weekend, we'll talk. No lawyers, just family. I read it 4 times. Behind the calm tone, I heard the unspoken warnings. We'll turn this around if you stop. I'm suggesting, but we won't undo what Mom signed. You're the unreasonable one. I closed my eyes. There was a time I would have agreed. Because I hated being the source of tension. Because I once believed giving in would lessen everyone's pain. But not anymore. The next morning I reopened all the documents. Organized, listed, numbered every timeline event. I compiled them into a 14-page PDF, neat with a table of contents, numbered sections, and annotations. At the top I wrote one line. I'm not writing to accuse. I'm writing because the truth is being distorted. Then I sent it to 27 people, cousins, aunts, uncles, a few longtime family friends, and those who'd messaged me asking what's going on. Subject what happened, no more, no less. No explanations, no emotions, no requests to take sides. I sent it, then turned off my device. Ethan came home late afternoon. When I told him, he didn't say anything, just placed a hand on my back and stayed quiet for a few minutes. I wonder, he said, if they're thinking you've become someone else. I nodded. They don't realize this is still me. Just the first time I'm not silent. 3 days later, responses trickled in. An email from my cousin Maria, subject I didn't know this side of the story. She wrote, I thought Jess was just exaggerating. But reading what you sent, I feel ashamed for believing a one-sided version. A text from my cousin Nathan. Did your sister really do that? She said you arbitrarily transferred assets. I sent him the time-stamped message where Jessica wrote, Mom said you'd agree. I've signed already. He replied, Wow. I'm sorry. I thought differently. I wasn't seeking allies. I didn't need vindication. But for the first time the truth stood with me, and I let it speak. And that was enough to let me breathe. Friday night, Jessica posted another story. A glass of wine, flickering candles caption. Everyone has their reasons, but not everyone has the courage to face the hurt they cause. No names, no direct call-out. But I noticed some relatives stopped engaging with her posts after my email. Mom stayed silent. Dad sent another text, 3 words, "Think it over." I read, it didn't respond. I wasn't angry anymore, but I no longer believed my silence protected anyone. I wasn't shielding them by sacrificing myself anymore. That night, Ethan brought me a cup of hot cocoa. He sat beside me, asked softly, "How do you feel?" I looked at the blank screen, not thinking of stories or criticisms. "Light," I said. "Not happy exactly, but the first time I'm not carrying a story that's not mine." Ethan nodded, placing his hand over mine. We said nothing more. Outside, social media churned. Stories were crafted, colored, embellished. But in this small house, I knew I was living the story I chose to tell, and I wasn't done telling it. I didn't realize it was Mom's handwriting until I opened the envelope. In an age of emails, texts, and social media, a handwritten letter in blue ink on cream paper carried a unique weight. Not because of its content, but because it was the only thing from Mom in 3 weeks that didn't feel accusatory, sarcastic, or manipulative. The letter had 5 sentences. "Sarah, I know things have gone further than we thought. I'm not here to make excuses anymore. If you still think of family, come to dinner this Saturday. No talk of money, no mention of the house. Just a meal among people who once loved each other. No, I love you at the end. No signature, no question mark." But its brevity left me unsure how to react. I left the letter on my desk for a day. At first I thought I'd throw it out, then considered keeping it as evidence like I'd done with everything else in this legal fight. But by night I did nothing. I just sat staring at it as if the words could rewrite the years gone by. The next morning I told Ethan. He listened silently, hand not leaving his coffee mug. As I read the letter aloud, my voice was dry and even, like reading a memo, not Mom's words. Ethan set his mug down. "Do you want to go?" he asked. I shook my head. "I don't know. Part of me wants to see if they've really changed. The other part just wants this peace to last a bit longer." He nodded, then said something I'll never forget. "You don't forgive because they deserve it. You forgive because you deserve peace." I arrived at 6 p.m. on Saturday. Not too early, not too late. I wore a simple navy dress, no jewelry, no makeup. I didn't come as a warrior, nor as a wounded child. I came as someone testing a door I'd once locked. The house I grew up in was the same, except today I felt like a guest. Jessica opened the door. No hug, no smile, but not cold. "You came," she said softly. "I made beef in red wine sauce. Your favorite." I nodded. Inside, Mom was setting an extra napkin on the table. A white one with purple embroidery, my childhood favorite color. She looked up at me. Didn't avoid my gaze, but didn't rush to hug me like before. "You're here," she said, as if that was all she dared to say. Dad was in the kitchen helping with glasses. When I entered, he glanced at me, gave a small nod, and turned away. Part of me felt relieved, at least today no one was playing director. Dinner began awkwardly. The clink of spoons on plates was oddly loud. No one mentioned what happened. No talk of banks, assets, lawyers, or lawsuits. No where family mantra repeated like a charm. Just salad, red wine, beef, and roasted potatoes. And silence not tense anymore, just cautious. Mom asked about my work. I answered briefly, vaguely. Jessica said she was planning to open a small bakery. I nodded, no comment. Dad stayed quiet, but added more beef to my plate before I reached for it. Sometimes Mom's eyes met mine. No anger, no clear regret, just a hint of realizing she no longer knew who I was. At one moment, as Jessica stood to pour water, I saw her shoulders, once the image I looked up to as a kid, the shelter I hid behind when bullied at school. And I wasn't angry. I was just tired. Tired of us both trying to be someone in each other's eyes, never sitting down to ask, "What do you think? How do you feel?" As dinner ended, Mom handed me a slice of apple pie, the kind she made every Christmas. I hadn't eaten it in 3 years. "Want a piece?" she asked. I nodded. She cut a perfect slice, not too big, not too small. Placed it on a porcelain plate, not the usual plastic. It wasn't an apology, but it was the first act in years that didn't feel manipulative. When I stood to leave, Mom handed me my coat. Jessica walked me to the door. The early spring air was chilly, but I didn't raise my collar. I wanted to feel this raw sensation of a relationship cracked, but not fully broken. Jessica stood still for a moment, then took my hand. "You don't have to forgive," she whispered. "But thanks for coming." I looked into her eyes. For the first time in months, I didn't see an opponent. Nor did I see her as someone who owed me. I saw two women, once sisters, once family, standing in a space that didn't need explanations. I squeezed her hand lightly, then let go. On the drive home, Ethan didn't ask if I was okay. He just held my hand in silence. And in that silence, I realized I hadn't forgotten. But I could breathe lighter. No one apologized. No one said we'll fix everything. But at least tonight no one demanded anything. And sometimes that's a start. I locked the security system one last time on Monday morning. Not out of fear they'd return. Not out of anger. I did it with a different mindset, not reacting, but acting. I changed the access codes, disabled remote controls, updated the connected devices list. The front door camera was now only accessible to me and Ethan. The alarm would only alert my phone. I stood up from the computer, exhaling lightly, as if an old chapter closed without slamming shut. The next day, the lawyer called. "The other side's gone quiet," he said, his tone professional, yet relieved. "No responses, no new filings. All prior complaints are invalid." Then he asked with a caution I appreciated, "Do you want to proceed legally? We have grounds to sue for asset fraud and intentional document manipulation." I looked out the window, where maples were turning deep green. Portland was entering early summer, the air smelling of fresh-cut grass mixed with coffee from the corner shop. I didn't answer right away, but when I spoke, my voice was strangely calm. "No, I don't want to continue." A brief pause on the line. Then he said, "I understand." And I knew I'd won, not against anyone, but for myself. The next day, Mom texted, "Your sister says, maybe one day you'll come back. I'm not sure, but I hope." I read it 3 times. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, not because I rejected our blood ties entirely, but because I knew if I responded now, I'd fall back into the old cycle where I smoothed things over, forced a smile, and wasn't asked, "Does it hurt?" For the first time, I chose my peace over others' emotions. Thursday morning, I woke before sunrise. I went to the kitchen, brewed 2 coffees, black for me with milk for Ethan. As I sat by the window, he woke, hair messy, pajamas wrinkled, but his eyes still warm. I handed him his coffee, saying nothing. We sat there together in a beautiful silence I once thought I'd never have again. "I think I'm done," I said, eyes on the small front yard. Ethan sipped his coffee, then turned to me. "Not done like it's over," I continued. "Done like I don't need to defend anymore." He placed his hand on mine, not gripping, just enough to say, "I hear you." I leaned back, and for the first time in months, my heart felt still, like a lake without ripples. Not because everything was neatly resolved, but because I'd stopped in time, before losing myself in a battle I shouldn't have had to fight. They might still think I'm cold, might think I betrayed them, might tell others I changed because of money, my husband, or power. I don't need to fix those stories. I just need to live my truth and let my silence this time be peace, not endurance. I stood, opened the window. Cool air rushed in. The white curtain fluttered like a breath. I closed my eyes, whispering to myself something I'd waited years to believe. I didn't abandon family. I just stopped before I lost myself. I don't forgive to forget. I forgive to live. I don't lock the door for revenge. I lock it to hear what I never dared say to myself. I deserve peace. I don't know if I'll return to that old house someday. Don't know if those who hurt me will truly change. Don't know if I'll have enough grace to open my heart again. But this morning, as I poured water into the small vase by the windowsill, I knew one thing. I'd come back not to the old house, but to myself. And for me, that was enough. Some stories don't need a fairy tale happy ending, just a place where you can breathe lightly and move forward. My story is like that. I didn't win to prove who's right or wrong, but to reclaim my peace, something I'd sacrificed for years, thinking it was for family. Through all the loss, hurt, and silence, I learned forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and stepping back isn't defeat. Sometimes knowing when to stop is the biggest step forward in a lifetime. If you're caught in an invisible tug-of-war in your own home, I hope this story gives you a bit of courage to set boundaries, not to push anyone away, but to keep yourself closer. If you see yourself in this story, don't hesitate to share your thoughts below. And if you want to hear more real stories like this, follow the channel. I'm still here, and I'll keep telling.